Right, it's 7 o'clock, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we move to call to the public. Members would like to speak at this time and provide comments. Anybody for call to the public? Last call. Go ahead, Jeanette.
Did you all get my letter?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. If anyone wants a copy, I have it.
So move on to approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Support. Motion support, all in favor?
Aye.
Next item, there's no minutes for approval. We'll move on to old business, item number 1. Zach, I know we haven't got any update to the review. I don't know if you have any additional comments or overview at this time.
Yeah, so most of it was related to specifications for equipment, light, fans, filters. Those are things that I would recommend be documented on the site plan. You'll put in another sheet on the back, because then that becomes part of the approval. So if those filters aren't used, it's a violation of the site plan. Just like if McDonald's says we're going to put the dumpster here and they put it over there, you can similar thing. That's part of the site plan. A couple of things I note from my review of the revised site plan is that we would recommend that any lighting added to the building be consistent with the township zoning ordinance. For example, it ought to be the full cutoff angle. Most wall packs are not. They just kind of blast light all over, so it should be something that drops light down. One of the other things we would recommend is specifying a maximum color temperature of around 3,000 Kelvin. That's kind of similar to what the old mercury lights were that you'll see out on the barns all over. If you get much higher temperature, it starts to turn white, and that's less pleasant on the eyes, especially in the rural settings. One other thing that I noted is the site plan calls for a 6-foot fence around the proposed grow facility and much of the yard. Your zoning ordinance limits fence height within required front yards to 42 inches. So either the fence would have to be pushed back past that, or once the fence crosses in the front yard, it'll need to be dropped down. They did note that the street address would be visibly posted at the driveway. See, those were my quick takes. There was a revised use statement that addresses some of the issues that were raised at the last meeting with the public hearing.
Zach, just to clarify, I think I was sure, but when you're talking about the lights, you're talking about outdoor lighting.
Correct.
It's not to confuse that
Correct.
with it.
Yep.
Right.
One question I had, Zach, in the use statement, as we're reviewing this updated one, there's a highlight, it might be hard to see, but it mentions that there will be hired help, on days that have additional work, right, so that it's an employee, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know what that means against our ordinance and with the act, the Michigan Act. How does that come into play? I don't know. I know you probably haven't had time to digest it fully, but
It is a bit tricky. What I will say is the Medical Marijuana Act continues to be an evolving law. And by that I mean it was adopted in 2008 and the courts are still telling us what it means. There's still telling us what the actual language of it means. For purposes of the Medical Marijuana Care Act, a caregiver is someone who's licensed through the state to grow medical marijuana for registered qualifying patients. Some communities will say one caregiver per site, and that limits the number of plants that can grow. Some will say you need to have separate, like if you have a large warehouse, that each caregiver's area has to be separated, or that there's a maximum of 2 or 3 or whatever the number might be. This is one where I would tend to defer to the township's attorney on the specific case law. At the very least, though, what I would recommend, if there are folks working there who are not the caregiver, that they be under the direct immediate supervision of the caretaker and that the caretaker is present on site. It is my understanding from folks who have better knowledge of these operations that there are times where you do need a lot of energy to tend to buds and plant and transfer and do all that stuff. So it's not unreasonable to think that you're going to need more than 2 sets of hands there, but it's important to make sure that the work is being done under the supervision of the person who's in charge of the site.
If you have any specific items, or places in the application you want to see or go over, just let me know.
Zach, is it your understanding then that the caregiver is the only one who has access to the buildings, or do other people under their supervision?
Under your ordinance, the language implies that it should be the caregiver who's accessing and monitoring and doing those.
So if and when someone else is there, i.e. if they're helping to harvest or doing electrical work or something like that, the caregiver needs to be on premise at that point in time, correct?
For work related to the operation, yes. If someone is there to mow the lawn, I don't think it needs to be the caregiver on site.
Okay.
So the caregiver operation is enclosed in the barn, in this
Correct.
case.
Yes.
So yeah, someone could come and paint the house and not be there or mow the lawn, but
Correct.
if they want to go in the barn, then the caregiver needs to provide access and
Mhm.
they need to do any work under the caregiver supervision.
Yep.
And then Zach, your comment of like any necessary equipment or filtration, I think the applicant listed it in the use statement here. Is that adequate, or is it better to have it listed completely on the site plan?
I generally like to have things on the site plan because that's the record that you can pull up and see what the specifications are.
Okay.
There's also an option to incorporate the use statement onto the site plan,
Yeah.
which is how we've been treating it, but, I mean, most of the things that have technical specifications, we like to see diagrams and things like that actually as a page on the site plan.
Yeah.
Like,
Zach, there was also concern by individuals too in regards to for the matter of mowing the lawn and things like that.
Yep.
Can we specify in there that, for example, the lawn must be mowed every 2 weeks or?
That seems reasonable. It's actually one of the notes that I've got on here for potential conditions, if you're ready to hear them. So I mentioned the light with the full cutoff and the color temperature, that any workers in the grow facility, which is the barn, be there under the direct supervision of the caregiver. Following along the use statement, that there not be residential use on the property at this time. The fence height. Now, one of the things I'm going to throw out there for discussion, because it was brought up at the public hearing, was if there's any screening in the fence. So one of the things you can do for screening on chain link fence is you drop the plastic slats or you put the fabric on the outside. Again, because the neighbors who have the driveway access there were concerned about folks being able to see it. My experience has been that the plastic slats dropped in tend to be more durable. I say that because I've worked in parks where we have to put those big fabric things up over and over and over, and it's a pain in the butt. That a Knox box be installed if requested by the police department or fire department. So a Knox box is a secure container where a key to open the gate would be. It's very common for locked facilities. Doing one right now in Webster Township for a car storage lot. And the fire department says we want to have that Knox box there in case if a car catches fire, we can have our little code, open the thing and put it out without having to wait for somebody to ram the thing with our truck. That the property be maintained in a residential manner. So the township has standards for grass height, as my understanding, but it doesn't apply to the rural estates area. Is that correct?
We don't have grass height.
Okay. You can specify that the grass be maintained not higher than 4 inches or 6 inches. And the tie bar is with special land uses, you want to mitigate any negative impacts. And by having the place look like it's maintained, folks driving down the road aren't going to have their attention drawn to this place with 2-foot-high grass and a chain link fence around a portion of it. Right, so maintenance of the property, that the details, as we discussed, be added to the site plan. So those are some potential conditions that I've identified for you to explore.
Our last discussion that we've had with them indicated that they just wanted to put a fence around the barn area, which in that case, since that's not front yard, that could be a 6-foot fence, correct?
Correct. As long as it's behind the required front yard setback.
Right, behind the setback is okay.
Yeah, on the, on the site plan here, they're showing it going closer to the road in front of the house is, I think, where Zach's comment came from.
So if they're gonna have it in front of the house, then it becomes potentially an issue if the setback is closer, is farther, is not as far back as is necessary. Let's put it that way.
Correct.
See the applicant is in attendance. Would you like to make any comments regarding any of the updated information you supplied? You don't have to, I'm just asking in case you do.
I'd be happy to kind of jump in. Sorry, I'm Scott Brock from their attorney. I think, again, that our updated statement, as well as the site plan, covers everything, especially all the concerns that were raised last time. To the specific conditions that have been suggested, I don't think my clients really have any issues with them. As to the fence, I will say, if we're trying not to draw attention to this area, at least for me personally, the chain link fence with slats makes my eyes jump to it directly. Again, if it's needed, it's needed, if it satisfies the concerns, but we would just like a fence around that building to try and keep costs as effective as possible. But otherwise, we're here to work with the community. My clients are fully compliant with Michigan law, townships, ordinances, I think as your planner has pointed out. So we're happy to address really any concerns, talk about this. But again, we're hopefully going to get your approval tonight so that we continue with this. So nothing really to add, but happy to answer any questions that we might be able to answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, with the fence, I mean, was that like an issue with, you know, not seeing the building? Because I'm kind of with you. If you screen this whole thing off, with a 6-foot high fence and slats on it, it's gonna make it look like a junkyard.
Yep, or something bad's going on there, you know, which is not the goal. We're trying to make this be consistent with the existing character of this property. The more you add to it, to me, the more you're drawing attention to it.
Well, it shows this fence going, you know,
Around the whole
around the whole property, around the house, all that. But you're saying that you want it just around the,
I think we'd love to change it to just being around the barn.
I think that would eliminate this.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, so again, we can change the site plan to draw it just around the barn specifically. I think that would cause a lot less attention to it, especially being behind the trees, off the road. You know, we're now, again, hiding it, and we're still keeping with the true intent of keeping that secure, which is what my clients want to do. Right? They don't want anybody in there that shouldn't be in there. Just trying to secure that area. And I think if we can isolate the fence to be just around it, not have those slats, I think you're not gonna get eyes drawn to it.
Yeah, and I think the biggest point of the fence is to keep people out, and if we go into the front, then, like you said, the ordinance says 42-inch fence, which I think, you know, makes it look nicer. You don't want a 6-foot fence in the front yard. So if the fence was in the back, kind of,
What we were talking.
Just around the building, I think it makes sense.
yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's the location that we're trying to secure, right?
Right.
And that's the point of it. I think besides securing it, you kind of want the property to look like every other property.
Right.
Yeah, consistent. When we were out there yesterday, Zach, 3 of us went out there, toured it. It does definitely look like that yard needs to be cleaned up. And most, if not all, the buildings need to be painted. Can we make that a condition?
It seems reasonable, yes, because, again, the condition is, or the nexus between the special land use and the condition is you don't want attention drawn to this property, you don't want it to appear as an attractive nuisance where kids see the building as not occupied and they go out there with a potato cannon at night to smash in windows. I'm not saying I've ever used a potato cannon, but yeah, so the nexus is you want it to appear like it's well-maintained residential property like others.
I can see what the neighbors were saying. It does need to be cleaned up. There's no question about that. And then also when we were inside the building, all these spec sheets and that, the equipment's already all installed.
What?
Yeah, it's all in there, everything. So, you know, as far as that being what they're gonna install, this is what we saw yesterday.
Right.
So is that would you attach this as an attachment to the site plan?
What's usually done is there'll be an extra sheet and the folks working on AutoCAD can take the PDF and they'll just plop it on the page. Where it's most important in terms of the special land use, again, is the impact on the surrounding properties. So the filtration system, the internal ventilation system, those ones specifically. The lighting is a lesser concern.
Yeah, because we went there and visited it, and they showed us the new LED lights and all that, but, you know, something else could change, and they want to change the model of the lights, which, you know, I don't think we need to have to come back through another special land use. But as far as the ventilation, that is directly impacting the surrounding properties and potential nuisances, so I think that one is
Yep.
important, but as far as the light, I don't think it needs to be all that materials.
No.
I agree.
The other thing too, it looked like there were a couple of cars that had been parked there for a while. And what we don't want to have is abandoned cars in the area. I know there's a trailer out there. They do have a garage there. I would guess if you are going to have cars there, that maybe they get stuck in a garage or something. But the idea is, since no one's going to be living there, you don't want a sign that says, hey, this is an abandoned building, if you'd like to come break the windows or come on up, you know, because there's nobody living there.
Agreed, and to that I would just say again, look at the surrounding characteristics of this property, right? At least from, and I haven't been out there as frequently as you guys, you know, representing the planning commission probably have, but it's rural estates, right? I mean, we're talking about this transition from farmland into the single family residential area, right? How many And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying, again, we're talking about characteristics of property here. Do I think it's reasonable to impose that condition specifically, that you can't ever have a car parked outside?
I don't think that it's a question of occasional cars being parked out there. I think ones that are sitting there under 9 inches of snow, ones that are unlicensed, ones that would appear that someone could come and strip them. You know, we're trying to make it so that people don't bother that site.
Yep, and I completely understand, and again, to that, just point that they've already put 100,000 into this, and they're gonna continue to improve the area.
Yeah, but that was all inside the building. You can't tell there was any money put into the property on the outside.
Yeah, well, I'd say if somebody willing to put 100,000 into any building on a property is gonna care about the general upkeep of that property, right?
You could make that claim, but
And
we
we
need
still-
to, I wanna make it conditional.
Yeah, so what does our township ordinance say about cars that are not licensed, not running, and
We don't have any.
there's
We
nothing?
do, beautification, yeah.
So you
They're
can-
classified as junk vehicles if they're unlicensed for highway use, stored outdoors,
In real estate, it's not allowed,
in any zoning district.
any zoning district. So, I mean, once again, that,
Yeah.
instead of trying to quantify that in this, to say it must,
Must comply.
and that's part of this special land use. So if someone else has a car that doesn't run out there, then they just get a warning or something. But you guys could have your special land use revoked if they did follow the current township ordinance regarding that, right?
Yeah, that's the way that would work.
With the security of the building, you guys are looking to put a chain link fence up. Is there gonna be any barbed wire at the top? I mean, because putting a chain link fence up, when I was a kid once, everybody was, you can climb a chain link fence and get over it, no problem whatsoever. You might wanna, we might wanna think about, as far as security goes, you do a second level of locked access inside the building, then it's not a chain link fence on the outside, which entices people to come over and know what's inside that block.
I'll have,
And they have on here, Chet, in this section of their use statement, they have this, they have an alarm system.
I saw that.
And then the cameras, but,
Saw that.
so, yeah.
to again, the barbed wire, my comment on that, generally, I'm be okay with it, but if we're trying to, again, not draw eyes.
Exactly, that's why I suggested a second level inside the barn.
Okay, but they still have this, the state-of-the-art
Access.
lock and security, you know, things that, again, they've listed there. While we've all climbed a fence, I don't know many kids that could get through those security systems and pick locks and, again, go behind electronic codes, as I understand it, that won't be there. I mean, this is secure structure. I don't see how imposing any more security requirements is gonna make it any more safe than what we have here. But certainly we'll take any feedback and discuss it. Of course, it's your decision at the end of the day here, so. But again, from my standpoint, this is above and beyond what you see a lot of medical marijuana facilities doing, especially for something of this size, right? I mean, we're not talking about one of those massive grow operations where you have hundreds, if not thousands of plants, right? We're talking about 6 patients with staggered grow cycles, right? To me, it's above and beyond. That's my opinion.
Well, and that's why, again, going with the, like you said, you got a barbed wire fence there, it's gonna bring eyes. Any fence is gonna bring eyes. So therefore, what's on the inside? Because I didn't go to the site. If you go through a locked door to get in, and then there's locked doors on the inside, there's your 2 locked fences.
There is separate rooms, so you walk in the barn, and it's a steel building, like you saw in the
Yeah.
drawings, it's arched. No windows, it seems fairly secure, I guess, from that aspect. And then there's like 3 rooms, and so each of those rooms has a door. So maybe you're saying that could just have a lock on it. you know, and I
Right.
my thought is, I don't know with the state, you know, the medical marijuana thing, but. you
It
know,
just says secured locked facility.
So that would, their current one lock on the outside couldn't count as it. So maybe we say each one of those grow room doors has a lock. You know, and I think even the stairs going up has a door there too, so.
All the doors have locks.
They all have locks, I didn't look at that specifically, but there's, you know, it's like a hallway, this small hallway when you walk in, and then everything else is kind of.
Do that again, correct me if I'm wrong, we got the fence with the lock, right, then we got the door to the facility with the lock. Now we've got rooms all with
Yes.
locks.
Okay.
So there's your 3 locks.
Well, again, appearance, I have an extensive security background, I do a lot of security work for the government overseas. And again, having a fence outside, whether it's got a chain or barbed wire on top or not, is gonna draw eyes and is gonna speak, inspire
I
curiosity.
assure you, my clients wouldn't construct the fence if they didn't have to, but.
Well, I'm not proposing that we say they don't have to, but it's a thought of keeping the views as the rest of the properties and stopping people from going, why is there a fence around that barn? Let me find out.
I think if they put the fence up past the existing barn there,
Mhm.
or like maybe just past that shed or
Yep.
wherever you're at there, Rich, I think it'd be really tough to see that fence from the road.
Okay.
Yeah, from the road, you can.
Yes. You know,
150 feet off.
even if they cleared up all the dead brush, you know, we were in the winter and you could see the road, but, you know, most of the year, I mean, that's quite a ways off the road.
And
And
it's 225.
Okay.
I don't know about from the driveway easement on the west of the property, but, you know, there's some distance there. I don't know, you probably could see the fence, but that's why I think bringing it off of the road, not only can we increase the height, and still meet the current zoning ordinance, but it'll be less visible.
Okay.
The 2 comments we heard at the last meeting on this from the public, one was the odor from the previous operations that was, I guess, was just open to the outside. Well, this building is really well sealed up now.
Okay.
And with these scrubbers, it seems like that's gonna address that issue. And that's gonna be a contingent issue that will be a problem if it pops up.
Yep.
The other issue was just the general condition of the yard, which it does obviously need some attention. And there's those 500-gallon fuel tanks just laying on their side out there. I saw 2. I don't know if there's more. You know, it just seems like all that stuff should be cleaned up, all the brush cleaned up, and you know, because that was a concern the neighbors had. And again, we'd make that a contingent
So
issue.
how do we do that? How do we write that down and say, like, what would we need to, I guess, what does the current ordinance say where we can just say it needs to be cleaned up per the ordinance? Or maybe we want to go further and say,
This is a special land use, so it could have
we
additional.
can go further, but what I'm saying is instead of writing a spec on how tall the grass needs to be and what diameter of that branch needs to be trimmed, you know, how can we point to something that's already established?
And it could be a statement as simple as shall be maintained as an occupied residential structure, or site.
Well, the
Basically
lawn
saying
used to
that it
go
is-
every 2 weeks.
I mean, that's a little bit ambiguous.
You don't have to keep standing up there. If you want to, that's fine, but I just want to make sure, in case you're tired of saying that.
Sitting all day,
Thanks.
we're good, appreciate it.
The other thing that I don't think I've heard anything about or addressed is any kind of a fire suppression system. Is there any fire suppression system that you have for that, or is it just
Yes.
bring your hose?
Fire extinguisher, fire extinguisher, but it's been gone through with the fire department, right? Yes. So the fire department has approved.
So the fire department approved,
No, we're dealing with the building department right now, so we're gonna be getting our permits from the building department, we're in talks with them right now. And anything that they need, we're gonna comply.
okay, because that would be one of the contingencies then, is that we need to know from the fire marshal whether there's any specific fire suppression required.
Yeah.
And if not, that's fine, but we would like to know that.
The building department won't issue a C of O unless you're signed off by the fire
Okay, we'll
Yep,
clarify that.
and that's part of the ordinance as well, we gotta comply with all county building restrictions that would of course include fire marshals, so. Yes, we want our permit from them. We'll have fire suppression.
Okay, so we really need to list what we want for specific items that need to be in the description.
I have a question on this. I don't know if you guys can see this. I'll try to zoom in far enough. Is the, on here it's called the bedroom. Is this on the lower floor with these, or is this upstairs?
It's on the main floor.
Main floor.
Main floor?
There's a loft above it.
Okay, so in, so these two rooms that you're showing one plant per square here, but in this room, it's smaller, and it says there will be a maximum of 36 plants. So that's, it equals 72, right, which you're permitted. But I'm just curious how those are laid out and where. I would like to make sure that it's specific, so that way we know exactly what we're voting on, right? Where, how many plants and where, because I don't know, on these ones, it's very clear, right? You put this box and you describe the trays really well, what they are. And in this one, it's unknown, right?
Yeah, so like with the bedroom, they're not fully grown plants. So like they're gonna be moving around occasionally, so I can't really mark where each plant will be there because they're like in the growing stage there. So they're being moved around occasionally. They're not in flower, they don't give off odor. It's just like a room for the next cycle.
Are they on like carts or something?
They're just in pots. They're just like in 5 or 10 gallon pots until they're ready to go into the flower rooms. So it's kind of, but the only thing that I can really note is that 36 plants will be in there at all times to occupy the 2 rooms once that cycle is over. So
Are those stored on racks or tables?
yeah, just like
I'm not familiar, but.
just on risers they'll be on, and they'll be moving around throughout the room just to, they're just gonna be like on little risers, that's all. They're gonna be in pots with soil and then on risers.
So you can wheel them around?
Yes, and move them around, and I don't know where in the room they will be at all times, they'll just be in the room, under the lights.
And it's due to the specific lighting requirements, right? Like plants need so many hours of lights at this stage.
Yeah, so
you
like
gotta
with the
take
lighting
them away.
stage, you guys asked yesterday, so like this bedroom, the lights will be on for 18 hours and they'll be off for 6, and then the flower rooms, one room will always be on, one room will be off. So there'll be 12 hours on and off.
That's why you gotta move, to get into the lights and timing and stuff.
Yeah, that helps me understand this specific chart or layout here. Thank you. We'll for sure need to, like Ross and Zach mentioned, the site plan updated with the specifications that will be for all the equipment you submitted in the use statement, and maybe it's incorporated as part of the site plan, the use statement, like Ross mentioned. fence would be
Yeah, I was telling
corrected.
I think Zach we're probably saying the same thing here, just having like a general conditions page, number 1 through X. These are everything that the site must have, the lights, the filters, the other items you guys had all mentioned today. Just have that general conditions page updated. And again, to the extent you're even inclined to go with the approval, you know, I would say subject to us submitting the site plan conforming to all of these requirements.
And as a reminder for process, for special land use and site plans, this body is a recommending body, makes recommendation to the township board. So in making your decision, you don't need to necessarily have a completely polished site plan in front of you. You can place the conditions on things that need to be amended, and it'll still get to the township board for review. The way I describe it is if there are tons of conditions or changes, you're usually going to want to look at it again. If there's a limited number or they're very clear, that's something that you can have staff, consultants, whomever look at to say, you know, here are the 5 conditions for the planning commission. Is there a page that shows this? Is this been revised? Has this been revised? And then it gets kicked to the township board.
Traditionally, if it's a conditional approval, we would be the first review in-house, and then we would send it to the planning commission subcommittee to verify that everything has been met to your satisfaction before forwarding.
And well, I guess one question I have, Zach, and does it matter if we have knowledge that work was done before a special land use was approved, as was mentioned by Steve and John?
Well-
By their site visit review.
Well, work done to the barn
Yeah, yeah.
or the previous growing operation?
Not the previous growing operation.
I mean, I could go buy that equipment off Amazon and put it.
Yeah, you can put it in there, yeah.
It wouldn't be
I'm just
special.
asking for Zach's
You
opinion
can
on
use it
that.
to grow tomatoes if you.
To make it clear. Yeah, no, I just want to make sure it's clear for everybody.
Yeah, so I will use a different example. If someone builds a deck without a permit, what you want to do, well, you don't want them to do that, but once you've been made aware of that, you send out the notice of violation. Hey, you built this deck, you didn't get your permits, you need to submit plans, you need to go through this process. Then they come in and they engage in the process to make the deck legal. So it's not uncommon for something to have been done improperly in the past. The goal is to get into compliance and then maintain it there.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that's clear.
So we need to come up with exactly what the conditions are.
Yeah, should we, I think we should have this typed up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I respectfully ask if we could have public comment on this portion of the agenda before we vote. And I should have done it at the first public comment. I thought that was only for things that weren't on the agenda.
You guys have any other?
No,
Yes, but
we need to get the specifics.
Yeah, I gotta work on a list. I think we're all
Yeah.
kind of working on a list here. We need to.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have to type it up. So I got something you want to type up, Rich, or?
I have a Word doc here. I can.
There we go.
All right, well, I'll go sit down on that one, but by all means, any other questions, please, shoot away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, we don't do it all, because this is what we're deciding. They have the opportunity to voice any questions that they have in the meeting prior to us getting into business. So in this case,
for this second.
Yeah, I would say the site plan.
But I want to make sure that, yep.
So, I think there's only I thought only one revision to the site plan, which would be the changing the fence,
Yes.
the plan view.
Yeah,
I think that would be, at minimum, 6-foot chain link fence with a latch gate completely surrounding the barn.
Yes.
And they'll probably wanna check with the fire department on that as far as if there's gonna be
Now, we did,
sizable.
as the planning commission, we haven't discussed that lockbox thing that
I would
Zach
say
recommended.
Zach's was just an
Now,
option.
My thought with that would be, I would rather put that onto the
Fire department.
fire department, I mean.
Right, that's
But
really
they
their.
need to be aware that they're gonna have a locked fence.
Yeah.
They'll require that.
Okay, I see, I don't know that.
We absolutely need the building department approvals.
Yeah, so but what I'm saying is does the building department approve, they get to see the site plan?
They're
final
going to
site
take
plan.
into account fire code, but not necessarily the fire department having jurisdiction. That's something else that you can request is review from the fire department, fire chief, having jurisdiction to verify that everything is satisfactory to them.
Okay, so that's where we would handle the locked, what do you call that thing?
Knox box, KNOX.
KN Knox box.
Fort Knox.
Oh, gotcha.
Generally, the building department, their analysis is typically pretty consistent with the fire department's view, but it's something that we could request above and beyond.
So then, the, other things, I guess I was wrong in the fence being the only thing. The other thing on the plans is the ventilation and filtration system, specifications be shown on the plans. That could be in the plan view or listed on the,
Right.
on the spec sheet, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it, detail sheet. You know, they already call them out on the plan sheet, it didn't say to make them out, so maybe that would be the location, but, the outdoor lighting, Zach mentioned that. Now, in my opinion, that should just be township ordinance.
Right.
I think it should just be, that's outside, that should just be,
They need to
no,
be.
nothing more, nothing less. It should be required,
Right.
but it needs to meet the ordinance. Outdoor lighting.
Did you want to specify the color temperature? Because that's not in your current ordinance.
I mean, I guess my thought is, I don't know why we would here if the actual goal of the outdoor appearance of this place is just to look like,
Well, that's part of the reason for the colors. If you get a halogen, you can have like 5,000 or 6,000 Kelvin. That looks like midday on equinox.
okay,
Versus what you typically see in barns is the kind of the warm, soft glow of around 2,000 to 3,000 Kelvin.
Yeah, I would say definitely specify that then.
Maximum color temperature of 3,000 K.
And that would, we would want that to be noted on the site plan on the spec sheet.
I mean, that's fine with me. I don't see why we would have anything beyond what our current ordinance says, but I'm okay with specifying that, I think.
Yeah, if it's important to list it, then we can list it. If it's
But
not-
that's what he's saying, it's not in our ordinance, it's, right? There's nothing stated.
I mean, well, you're saying you would recommend our ordinance has that in there?
Yes,
See what I'm
and a lot of newer ordinances are specifying color temperature now.
Yeah.
So one I heard is that any,
Then in here put, with the exception that the color temperature be a minimum of what?
Maximum.
Maximum.
of
3,000 Kelvin.
I don't know much about lighting. Yeah,
just a giant K,
Units on that?
Kelvin, just a big K.
Big K. Okay.
So I heard something to the effect of any on-site workers in the grow facility shall be under the direct supervision of the
Yes.
of the caretaker, and only enter the grow facility when the caretaker is present.
That's correct.
You want to specify no residential use?
As part of the.
It's described in the use statement, but just to clarify.
Well,
So we're.
now, what if they had mentioned that the caregiver could use a house for, to stay the night if they wanted?
But we're saying nobody can stay in the facility, that's what you're saying?
Oh,
On a permanent
the barn,
basis.
Yeah,
the
The
actual
barn
barn, no residential.
you can't have a bedroom in there,
For the property,
yeah,
Yeah.
that needs to be.
in the barn.
There are a couple different ways you can slice it. You don't want folks living in there. I've actually seen pole barns as grow facilities where there's someone sleeping on a cot back there. That's not good for a lot of reasons. So one could be no residential use within the grow facility, which is that barn. The other could be to potentially limit the residential use to the caretaker only. Or caretaker or employees.
Well, I guess my opinion would be, since they've got a building there that has a house, if they wanted a residential use there, they're free to
Yep,
rehab that building and put it to use there.
yep,
I'd
and
say no residential use in that barn.
Right.
In the barn, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see something that says mow lawn every 2 weeks. And also something that says no unlicensed or abandoned vehicles.
Doing a time frame for lawn maintenance might become
Yeah.
challenging for enforcement. I mean,
Yeah,
you
that's-
could put a
that's-
specific number
We're
on.
not mowing it this week.
Well,
I mean, so
yeah, I would say,
during growing
In the
season.
season.
yeah, May through October.
I think
Well,
what Zach is saying is if you give it a height, because even May through October, we can have a drought. and all
Yeah,
that.
so how about this?
It's 6 inches.
Something along the lines of the property shall be improved and maintained in a residential condition, including but not limited to exposed wood or metal on structures, dead brush or trees, grass, rubbish, and other waste materials.
Yeah, that's what I said.
That's what I thought I heard.
Yeah.
And so the way that that's written is it gives discretion to the enforcement folks of,
Yeah. I'm with
Yeah, if
you.
it hasn't been mowed in 2 months, then there's going to be some issues.
How many acres is this property?
It's like 80.
8 acres.
and again, my understanding is that
Well, it's not all grass, I mean,
I
they
know,
got,
that's what I mean. It's
No.
gotta be very.
so
yeah,
my,
I see what you mean, if there's a dead tree 8 acres back,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just up by the road, you know, from
so how,
the barn to the road,
between, in the area of the grove vicinity towards the road.
to the road.
Yeah, it's not very, so, yeah, going to the ordinance, John, that you mentioned, it doesn't specifically say anything about grass height or maintaining grass. It's all about items or objects in property.
Talk about having them paint the buildings as well.
Well, I think what he said is any exposed metal or wood, you know.
Oh, it's,
Well, so like, you know, you saw that there could be some painting on the house because there's exposed metal or exposed, you know, the flashing peeled away. Maybe
yeah,
exposed-
like the Quonset, that needs to be painted 100%.
The what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Building, it's all metal.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all you can see.
Yeah, so that would be exposed metal.
Yeah. So that's how they're addressing painting. It's where it needs to be painted.
Is it painted now?
No.
Is it galvanized?
Probably was.
It's like partially painted.
Yeah, I think some of it.
It looks like it's been painted a long time.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like rusted out,
It's
It's not
1956.
but it's not like complete.
Got it.
It must have been a galvanized structure then.
It's from when Quonset huts were a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
back in the 50s.
There's a lot of stuff. I don't know
What's
if
that?
we. I went read on something back.
So
Leftover.
I'd recommend if you settle on your conditions to make sure the applicant understands them.
Yeah.
So does someone have a final?
I think, just in my opinion, I think most of these, almost all of them, we had discussed with them at some point. But I think once we go through this all, we'll go through it back with them. And
Yeah.
make sure that it's,
Ask Zach, or, Zach to say that again.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
Because you
I don't
kind
know.
of pause that, property shall be maintained.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I can't write it. Right?
Sorry, so the last one, property shall be improved and maintained in a residential condition, including but not limited to exposed wood or metal on structures, dead brush or trees, grass, rubbish, and other waste materials.
Vehicles, I think, these guys in
Yeah, I just think that we need to address the vehicles too.
there. Now,
Inoperable.
is that something that we can tie to the township ordinance without having to rewrite a spec on it?
It's a little bit tighter if you include it in here.
No, we'll still put it in here, but we gotta rewrite the spec on here?
I don't think so.
That would be a use statement thing, not necessarily a site plan thing, just making sure that they don't maintain what our ordinance is defined as junk vehicles.
Yeah, so still put on the list, but
Yeah.
just link it to the township ordinance.
I think probably the cleanest way is just add a comma junk vehicles in there. And so by including it as a condition, it gives a stronger lever for the township to enforce it. So if it's not on the list, it's silent, and any enforcement for an unlicensed inoperable vehicle would default to the township's ordinances. If it's part of a condition, the township can do that enforcement and bring back for revocation of the special land use because there's been a violation of the
Yes.
condition.
Yeah.
I like that, I just, meaning, we don't need to say, registration and all this. When the
No,
ordinance
just
says
junk
it,
vehicles.
but still tied to special land use to that condition.
Yep.
One thing I don't know if it's addressed is any disposal of materials, whether.
Yeah, we should put that in there. We did discuss that with,
Yeah.
with the applicant yesterday.
All the
Kurt
way.
had a question. But. Zach, do you know if any of that, if there's anything in like the caregiver ordinance or whatever the state the state licensing about
It's silent on disposal of materials.
disposal?
What can the applicant describe,
Yeah,
like
like,
your plan for that?
I'm sorry, what was the
For
question?
your plan for the disposal of whatever waste there is?
Yeah, like we talked about yesterday, we have a company that comes whenever we call them, and they'll come and just take all the waste out. Nothing will be outside on the property. All the waste will be stored inside the barn, and until the company comes and will load up all the trash, and they'll take it to the junkyard. So nothing will be around the property at all, like anytime we have garbage. It'll be picked up by a professional company.
Is that specified on the plan somewhere? I'm just looking on here, maybe I missed it.
No, it's not on the plans. I didn't know that. we would-
Yeah, I think it would be good to have that.
Just to say like,
Yeah, where it's located and where, because that, is it gonna be like a dumpster?
no, it's just like a truck that would come and pick up the trash, let's say after every
Okay,
harvest.
so
That's
residential.
really the only time that we'll have trash.
How about any liquid fertilizers, anything?
Yeah, like they'll come and pick up all the pots and everything,
Trouble.
and they'll pick it up and it'll be gone. There won't be any, like, other than that, there won't be any trash.
Okay, then that, if, it would be good to have that as part of, as part of the use of the facility, right? Make sure that it's listed on the use statement.
I can add
Because
that.
it is a big part of the process, right? As you
It
mentioned.
is, it
there's
is
a
part
lot-
of the operation, yes.
Yeah.
That will be added.
Yeah, let's put that in there, something about the fertilizer waste
Yeah.
containers, marijuana residue. Your byproduct, there you go. Any of it. Stored inside the barn.
Do we also need to put in there something about the caregiver is going to be delivering the product to patients? The patients will not be coming to the location?
Yeah, I thought that was in there.
Yep.
Is it?
It's on the,
Yeah, that was in the use.
Page one, there will
Page one,
be
okay.
no on-site transfer.
Yeah, okay.
They're processing it there.
put shall be, waste or byproducts shall be stored inside the grow facility until picked up or
Hold off site.
hauled off site. Maybe just a new sentence, say this shall be documented on the site plan and use statement.
Makes it clear. Any issues with those? John?
No.
Make sure we're all okay with those conditions as part of it. Any action we can.
I think they're gonna hold all the comments and questions till we do the call to public again, so.
But before voting?
What's that?
Before voting? That was my question. Just for this
Won't
segment.
do us any good afterward.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I say before.
I know Ross, we don't have any, what your take is on if there's any requirements.
It's up to
One
you.
way or
I mean,
the
it's not
other.
required because this is not
Which I
a
think-
public hearing,
Well,
and
I
this
think
is just a
people-
recommendation body. There's still the township.
There is a
that will
public
grant the
hearing.
final
You're
approval.
recommending, and we have the right to recommend as well.
So,
You know, we live next to that garbage pit.
Yep, so
We want to speak.
as Mr. Nicholson pointed out, for special land uses, there is a requirement to hold a public hearing. There was a public hearing at the last planning commission meeting. So planning commission isn't required to take public comment specifically to this. You had to call the public at the beginning and at the back. But you do have the discretion, if you want to, you can allow it through your process.
thanks, Zach, and, I'll ask commissioners how you feel on this. I don't wanna be making the decisions on my own, but I will remind everybody that we are charged to make a recommendation based upon our ordinance, not upon what our personal beliefs are, or feelings, or what ideas we may have about it. It has to be based upon the ordinance. Just wanna make that clear
Understand.
for everyone's awareness, so, what do you think, Steve?
I think we should,
I think public comments.
public comment should be
Only,
okay.
only because I think it was unclear.
Yeah.
There was the open to public comments, third thing on the agenda, but I think it was unclear that that was for things on this agenda or things outside the agenda.
Okay, Chad, what do you feel?
I agree, they hear your comments, but if somebody's already said something, don't say it again. Just say, I agree with whoever and let it be at that.
So, okay, so it sounds like we have three of us, and, if you could, please, when
I would say
doing,
do keep it, I would say.
please come to the podium so people on Zoom can hear you, please, and then try to keep it to 3 minutes, so we can keep it orderly and address any comments or questions or concerns to the planning commission, please. I'll say that, so if anyone at this time would like to speak regarding this little tiny item.
I'll start. Thank you, Jeanette Lopetta from Fuller Drive, and also on behalf of Tyrone Township Watch. Again, thank you for letting us speak. I didn't realize that the comments at the beginning, that I could have made comments then. And also, I didn't realize that you were possibly voting tonight on this. I understand it's just a step, but it is a step, and it's very important. So I would I was gonna ask you, where's the process and where does it stand now? I think I have a better idea of that now, because you're gonna pass it to the board if you vote, and then they look at it, bring it back to you, right? Okay. Regarding the operation, will you be asking for information regarding their pest management? Do you know what type of chemicals that they're using? Okay, that's very important. How will they be cleaning the sprayers after they use them? And where will that water be going? Do we know the answers to that? I asked, or somebody, I think John confirmed that they will be processing the final product there. I didn't know that. I thought they would be sending it out to process. So if they're processing it, then that's done in the facility, it doesn't go out, correct? Do we know that for sure? I'll just ask you a bunch of questions and you can decide if they're important or not. You talked about the liquids and everything, how they would get a hold, or everything would be contained. If you would look at their operation, it says the first sub bullet at the bottom of that use statement on the first page, flower room, the drain trays where each plant will be sitting on for water, drainage, to where? I think he means, what is sub pump? What is a sub pump? Did he mean sump pump or sub pump? Do we know what's meant by that? And if it's a sump pump, do you guys know where the sump pump is? Where it's located? What waterways are there? Where those waterways go? That the water goes back and forth, that it eventually ends up in Lake Shannon? Okay, so that's something else to look at. The fire department, we talked about that tonight. My understanding is that they are very strict about the codes, exactly where everything is. There's a lot of electricity, et cetera, coming in there. I think that the I would like to know when exactly the fire marshal and which fire department and when they will be taking a look. Obviously, they've got equipment in there already. I believe the fire department should, or the fire marshal, or whoever you said, should be involved in this, at the front. Also, I'm just wondering how this equipment can already be installed, but I guess it's okay if maybe they're growing tomatoes. Will it ever grow beyond 6 patients? Is that in there? Or are we going to find out next year that they're going to 12 patients? I don't know. Fire suppression was mentioned, and they mentioned that they have an extinguisher. I don't know that they're really up on what fire suppression is, but I know that the wedding barn, I believe, one of the wedding barns, it was like around $100,000 for fire suppression. I don't know if they know about that.
You're over 3 minutes, just so you know.
Okay, all right. So there's a lot of things. I know other people that have things to say also. Yes, they did mention before that they would be having reunions there, that they would be having family type. That's what they said. So all my problem is I don't know whether or not, I'm not comfortable with what may or may not be going on there. But I do believe that the things that I brought up, you guys need to know what chemicals they're using and where that's draining off to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I knew that was we just previously talked about my biggest concern.
Can you state your name, please?
Daisy
Thanks.
Borson.
Thank you.
They are claiming all the drainage is going into the sump pump, so I'm wondering where that's discharging at, because there is water that flows there, there's wetlands there, goes across the street, goes behind the house, so northeast. I know a lot of wetlands are protected federally, so I'm wondering what kind of aquatic negative effects are going to, have on the environment for that, for the livestock, because there's a farm right there, and then for everybody else, because all these water systems are connected. So I'm wondering what's going on with that. Then in their original submission of paperwork, they stated that most septic systems and well systems cannot, there's a strain on those systems by marijuana grow operations. And I can tell you that back from a listing in 2005, that the house was listed as an abandoned, so any kind of system that's already been in place, I feel would need to be checked and replaced and, you know, because it hasn't been used in years and years and years. So when they are all of a sudden using it, you know, there's gonna be a lot of issues coming along with that, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
CJ Callahan. I would like to, before my 3 minutes start, you mentioned about saying our name and loud for people on Zoom could hear it. I was in the back room for part of this, and I couldn't hear any of you guys. I think you all need some kind of a speaker system or whatever, because we can't hear you. And same goes for you guys too. You know, and the guy with the mask, you know,
There's microphones that,
they're not loud.
they're
enough,
connected to
man.
the speakers back there.
Can we turn them up?
I don't know how to do that.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm an old guy. I guess there's a few others here, but anyway, okay. Will the planning commission folks volunteer that they will be using this service, that they smoke it? Is that anything that, you know, is this service gonna be something you guys benefit from? And if you do, shouldn't you recuse yourself from voting? Understood, right? Okay. Property values. Does anybody on board or here have any property that even comes close to 9165 Fawcett Road? Can you answer or no, or don't?
I don't know if any of us are neighbors, but.
So,
I have no problem.
the public comment is not to be questioned back and forth.
I understand, just out of courtesy, when I'm talking property values. Okay, now we've looked at that mess. That has not been nice since 1975, when Steiner sold that property and moved to the east and built a new house. Because that had an open heart surgery and couldn't work around there anymore. I know when that Quonset hut went up because I helped put it up. Okay? It wasn't in good shape then. It was brought from Holly, Michigan. Had been up for probably 25 years then, and it was either late 69 or 70 when we put it up. You know, I think you ought to look long and hard at that, because that place is an accident waiting to happen. I don't think Consumer Power needs to have an extra drain on the system. We lost power just the other day for no good reason. You know, and then you got somebody stuck in our power that should go to residents that have been here. I'm 69. I've never left. I've been a resident all that time. 4-H. Anybody know what it stands for? One guy. Or one guy will admit it, I guess he said. Head, heart, hands, and health. That's what we were supposed to be teaching our kids. And we did. Nowadays, everybody's moved into our little community, and they want to change it to something different. You know, when I asked the question about people in our immediate area that maybe touch the property, or even have to look at it on a daily basis, you know, we can't have a back and forth, so I have to assume you don't. I hope you don't. Because I look at that, I've looked at it from 1975. Ed and Lois Steiner would not come back down Fawcett Road once they moved up north because it killed them to look at that. Lois Steiner took care of that place better than any lawn maintenance company. Do the pot people live in our township? Now, I know you can't answer me, but I think it's something you might write down and somehow get it to us, the people. Because if they don't live in our township, or have they ever done a grow operation anywhere else, because they don't act like they know what they're doing, I think we deserve better. Okay, what will we do with the property if this planning commission says no? They put all this money into it, and what happens to it after that? As far as the well and the septic, they were bad when Steiner sold the place. I don't know if any time it's been replaced, and it's on the far side, and I don't know how they got water out there. I got one more, and I'll leave you alone. Oh, that was, yeah, who was, lived close to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Steve Atkinson. Some of my questions have been answered, but I finally read, is that something that we can get to look at, or is that just something, is that printed out somewhere where I can look at it? It's hard for me to read.
Yeah, that was included in
It's on the
packet.
Okay, I didn't get one, this is only my second meeting.
Well, it's already modified.
I've been here since '77, so
This document is in the packet, right?
But,
Not what we were typing, this document.
That's what I'm saying, it's been modified.
the definition of a caretaker, is that one person only? You cannot say, I don't feel good today, I'm gonna have him go do my job because they're cutting and growing or doing something today that requires the caretaker's presence. Is that something that is a one person only deal? It's a one trick pony, you just one guy and one guy only, so, you know, something, if he doesn't feel good or for some reason he's on vacation, whatever. And the amount of plants, okay, I'm not a farmer, but I understand them. If you've got 36 here and 36 here, that's your 70. But then as this one is done and you move it into the flower room, do you not plant any more plants? Do you wait for those to be completely harvested and removed from the facility? I noticed the wording is there will 72 plants will occupy the location. Should they be set a maximum of 72 plants? So there's never more than, as you rotate your crops, you got 36 in this building and 36 in this building. And when these are ready, you take these down so you can harvest them, you put another 36 plants in. Well, 36 times 3 is.
They got 18 in each room.
Whatever it is, whatever the numbers are, you know, whatever the numbers are. As you rotate from bud to process, whatever your final product is. The wording is what I questioned. I don't want it's a minimum of 72, it should be a maximum of 72.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Right, thanks, sir.
Gabe Borison, 9147 Fawcett. Okay, I said some things in the last meeting, and you know, this is my first time dealing with this type of issue with the township stuff, so forgive me if I'm overstepping you guys' bounds or bringing this stuff where I shouldn't, but you told me the last meeting that you guys don't enforce anything. It's up to the citizens to do that and report it, correct? Okay, that's the only reason we're here right now. If nobody would report this, they'd still be doing that. They don't care about the rules. I'm not opposed to what they're doing. Marijuana, medical marijuana, that's fine. Follow the rules just like everybody else. They're blatant in not following them. They said they got shut down because they got caught. You can make up all these conditions you want right here. Who's going to enforce them? It's up to me. It's up to CJ. It's up to all the other neighbors. I mean, safety-wise, you know, I'm an engineer. I'm not an electrical engineer, but just running down a list of all their different equipment they've got. I'm close to 200 amps just in that barn. I mean, if that system hasn't been updated in 30 years, guarantee it's not a 200 amp service. Guarantee it's not a 300 amp service. Probably less. So, the next time we put those lights on, guess what? All of us lose our power. Just put it in perspective. You guys saw those lights they have right there, 650 watts a piece. It's the equivalent of 6,500 watt light bulbs. So you do the math, all these lights, all the wattage added up, the equivalent of 300 100 watt light bulbs. That's incandescent ones, not the LED ones that take a third of the power, or a tenth of the power, whatever. You always hear in the news, these places are catching on fire, whether it be because
gas they're using or electrical. My house is right behind there. You know, if what's catching on fire, guess what? So is my house. So, it's just safety. And like I said, follow the rules about only being one person there. We've witnessed many times, multiple people being there at once. People coming and going. We've got kids at the bus stop right there. We can't, in our right mind, let them go down by themselves. When you're a kid, I'm sure you walked to the bus stop yourself. You probably walked to school by yourself. We can't do that. We don't know those people. They used to know your neighbors. But if you got people coming and going, it's not safe. So, I'm sure there's plenty of other stuff, but I have confidence in Livingston County, the building department, that they'll see all this stuff as well, because they'll get shut down right away. Like somebody asked, if this gets declined, they're just gonna keep doing it. They did it for what, 2 years, year and a half, until I got caught. So, thank you.
Good evening, my name is Robert Kerr. I have questions on the nuisance mitigation section. I'm a little confused, I guess, about the air scrubber unit, or the 2 scrubber can that says that will dissipate odors, but dissipate to me doesn't mean eliminate. So I'd like some clarification, maybe you can ask the applicants on that, or consider that for your own thought. And also, they talk about no fresh air intake or outtake. I'm not sure what that statement means, but how do you operate a facility where the plants need oxygen to grow, need fresh air, but there's no fresh air coming into the building? And how do you keep the air that's in the building from escaping? Especially in a Quonset hut, that's not an airtight building. So it said that previously there were mechanicals that had fresh air intake and outtake. Previously there was a fresh air ventilation system to suck the odors out of the building and blow it outdoors. So I think by the wording they're trying to mitigate the concern of the odors, but the resolution of that concern, to say there's no fresh air intake or outtake, to me is a completely unrealistic statement. If you open the door and you walk in, there's air going in, there's air coming out, and the air that's coming out is carrying the odors. So I know, the odors is a big concern of people living in the area. So I just want to bring those points up for your further thought and consideration, or if you can ask the applicant to further and better explain, those things that are written in there, how there's no fresh air coming in and out. What exactly are the scrubbers doing? Are they meant to eliminate an odor? If not, what does dissipate mean? Dissipate is an awfully open and subjective statement. It could mean reduce odors, but it may not reduce it to the level that is acceptable. So, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, my wife has asked me to speak for her 3 minutes because she's extremely shy. She does a bad job.
Hold on, if one per person, please.
Yeah, I'm speaking for my wife because she's shy. Okay, she'll come up. Charlie, you want to speak? You're too shy. She did good, see? Put her on the spot.
Thank you.
Last year, I was out mowing my grass in the summer, and all I smelled was skunk. Not a pleasant smell for somebody that doesn't smoke marijuana. I could see if somebody needed it. It needs to be in a business district, not a residential area where there are families and children. And it's real easy for a child, I don't care how tall the fence is, they will find a way to get to that building. And as far as the yard, you guys are all worried about the yard. But what about all of our water systems? We have to drink that water. Our animals have to drink that water. We've raised cows for almost 40 years. And nobody told us in the whole time that they were operating over there what was going on 2 houses from us. Would any of you like them to be your neighbor? That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you. Anyone else? There's a hand. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just have a really quick question. Steve Bissell on Island Trail. Is there a reason why the grow operation is limited to the number of patients?
That's the maximum the state allows.
Just maximum?
That's the maximum.
State, that's it?
That's under enacted law 1 of 2008.
But as you said, the laws are changing.
So that's just the state law, right? Okay, I just was curious and I hadn't heard that comment. Thanks.
This looks like there's a hand up.
Yeah. Unmute her. Tell her to, okay, so she can just unmute.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so, sorry about that, I had a bad connection for a minute. So I thought I heard you say earlier in the meeting that a caregiver is licensed through the state, is that correct?
I'll
Okay.
answer questions
Like-
following public comment.
Oh, okay, so I guess what I'm wondering, I'll save the question for further thought, I suppose. What I'm wondering is, who's responsible for the checks and balances if they're licensed through the state? Is that enforced at the township level? Is that enforced at the state level? And I know there was a public commenter earlier that said somehow that was the resident's responsibility. So if you can't answer now, I'll just follow up with an email, but that's the question I'm wondering in the back of my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? All right. Close public comment regarding this agenda item. Just one comment, I think it might answer some of the questions that were raised. There is, in our special land use ordinance, the applicant is required to provide an annual report. And Ross, I don't know if you want to maybe provide details of what's in there or what's expected in that. You might give a better description than I will, but as part of this ordinance.
So that's something that can be required for all special land uses, but not mandatory. Depends on the specific use. I mean, an annual report can be used, how we have used it for event venues and things like that, where obviously you have a maximum number of attendees that you're required to stay under.
Yeah.
And we have insurance documents and things like that, where there's content that you can include in an annual report. If it's necessary as a special land use, you can require that, but as far as content, you need to determine what they're reporting on.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Zach, I know you had some.
I'll try to start with questions related to the Medical Marijuana Act. So there are a couple of things that are defined in that act, and that was the voter-initiated act. It's called Initiated Law 1 of 2008, Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. In it, it defines caregiver, qualified patient, their terms of art under the law. It states that there's a maximum of number of plants, 72 per caregiver, based on the number of maximum qualifying patients that you can have. Both the caregiver and the qualifying patient have licenses from the state. Let's see. So when I mentioned it's evolving law, because it was voted at the ballot box, it actually takes a supermajority of the state legislature to amend the actual law. What is changing is how the courts have interpreted what it means. So for an example of that, your zoning ordinance limits caregiver operations as a special land use in certain zoning districts. One of them is the RE, Rural Estates Zoning District. It wasn't clear that a local unit of government had the authority to do that, to require it be a special land use or limit the zoning districts you could do it in until about a year and a half ago. So the standards you have in here were actually pretty aggressive at the time. There was a case, someone versus Byron, where Byron said, Township of Byron said, you can only do these in industrial districts or whatever district it was. Up until that, the court said that seems reasonable because you haven't prohibited the use that state law makes you have to allow. You put reasonable conditions on there to limit where it's at, to minimize the impact. That seems fine. Before that, lower courts were saying no prohibitions. You can grow 72 plants as a caregiver in your basement next to the daycare school with houses and apartments all over the place. So the 72 plant maximum is through the Medical Marijuana Act. The caregiver definition is there. One thing, again, the state act doesn't distinguish how far caregivers and qualified patients are. You could have a caretaker who lives in Temperance, Michigan, well, maybe not Temperance, but down by Toledo, and you could have the qualifying patient in Copper Harbor. The state act is blind to that. As long as they're both licensed, you can grow and give it to them. You meet halfway in Newberry or wherever. Let's see. My understanding from fire code is that the building likely isn't large enough to require suppression. In my quick search of township ordinances, I didn't see fire code listed there as one of the adopted ones. Is that correct?
Yes.
So
We generally just rely on fire department, fire chief, fire authority review of specific applications.
generally buildings have to get pretty big before, or multiple family or certain types of uses before they have to be suppressed.
And or occupancy.
Yep. Let's see. So if any of the planning commissioners or township board members were a direct neighbor, generally that would disqualify them from sitting here because they have a direct impact that's different from the general community. Is a conflict of interest. So kind of my rule of thumb is if you get the letter, there's a public hearing, you probably shouldn't be sitting at the front of the table for the public hearing. My understanding is none of the folks here are disqualified for that reason. Trying to go through these questions. One of the things that I would recommend that may be considered as a condition, just to clarify, is that any water be disposed in a functioning septic sewage system on the site. The Livingston County Health Department does the inspections and management of those, so it would be treated as any other effluent from any other residential facility, or if you had your 12 recreational plants in your basement, it'd be treated the same way. Well, actually, in those cases, you can dump the water wherever you want. I don't believe Livingston County has a time of sale inspection for septic fields. Okay, so whenever anyone's house is sold in Livingston County, you don't know the condition of the septic field. Some communities, and Michigan's a bit bizarre in that we have a lot of water. You'd think we'd be more interested in what's going on in the lakes. It's hodgepodge by county now. And so one of the conditions you might want to consider is that any water from the operation gets to a septic field approved by the county. Okay, I think I tried to hit the highlights. Were there any other specific questions that I missed?
I think, as part of the building permits that they're required to get, right, that's encompasses electrical and probably structural, whatever, that does not encompass water in your experience, Ross, or?
No, but
Just so
that
I'm
will
clear.
be, that could be health department, it would be environmental health. If we wanted to add that as a condition, then we could require health department review of the septic system to ensure that it's capable of dealing with whatever effluent comes from the property.
Oh, and there was a question about the odors. My understanding is that previously the site had open vents, and so air came in, air went out. It's my understanding, based on this information and the folks who've been out there can confirm, is that the structure has been spray foam insulated, which is a very efficient method for stopping odors and air movement. My understanding is that there are no vents connecting the inside to the outside, so there's no going to be air intake or outtake. And in the spec sheets, carbon dioxide for the plants will be provided from propane tanks, is my understanding, based on the spec sheets that we've got there.
Yeah, there's stuff.
So, and I can add just on the enforcement questions and things like that, we are complaint-based by policy, which does not mean that we will not enforce. It's just that it needs to be initiated through a complaint.
If you can't see it,
If
how do you know to complain?
the neighbors, if it creates any nuisance factors, then there would be a complaint. Otherwise, it would be a kind of a no harm, no foul situation. We unfortunately don't have a full-time ordinance enforcement staff that can go around and
Look for
police the
stuff.
township.
Which is another reason you miss the pesticides.
Would the applicant,
They do have in the application, and that would be in the, part of the special land use that is organically grown. That it's organically grown. That is-
Organically can mean a lot of things, but we need to know what they're using for their pest control. How do they control their pests? What chemicals are they using? And those are all gonna go into the trays and then into the sump pump, as it states right now. That's a really important question. What chemicals are being used?
More than that,
Pest
I would
control.
say, where does it end up?
It's under pest control. That really needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I think those are two things that need to be added.
Marijuana plants, absolutely.
the applicant, the question for you, do you have, maybe you could provide some, expertise on how the air system works, maybe? I know it's clear you're not venting, you have all the systems in place, but do you have something that generates oxygen and?
Well, no, it
CO2?
generates CO2. Plants don't use oxygen, plants give off oxygen.
Yeah.
So,
Can you come to the podium so Zoom can see him?
Again, the CO2 tanks there provide the carbon dioxide, plants give out the oxygen, there's no filters to allow the air to go out, or vents, I should say, to allow the air to go out, and we've got scrubbers in there as well as the foam. I mean, it's all intended to keep everything inside isolated so that nothing leaks out. The oxygen and carbon dioxide levels inside that building, I fail to understand how that's any form of relevance to anybody in this room. It's all about the odor, where it can go. It's trapped, it's contained. These systems have been around for all sorts of marijuana facilities across the nation. So this is standard practice.
Yeah, I annual report completed. And we'll define at some point in time later what needs to be in the annual report. And I think, as pointed out, they need a septic system check for anything that's going to go into that system.
I have a question for you guys on the, when we're talking about all the septic and drainage and all that, are the plants using up all the water you're providing it? I mean, is that the theory, or what's the method of growing, I guess?
So everything's grown organically, from the nutrients to, all the water, we have 3 filters that filter out the water, first of all. There's a pre-filter, and then 2 filters before the water gets into the reservoir. We mix them with organic nutrients, they're fed, and they absorb all the water, so there's very minimal runoff.
So like that line that we saw at the bottom, there's these trays, black trays, and then there's that white pipe in the bottom of it.
Yes.
That's feeding the water?
That's a feeding system.
And so there's no, what about the plants just use all that water?
Yeah, there's rarely any runoff, and if there is runoff, we vacuum it or mop it up, but there will never be runoff. We feed the plants exactly what they need. Everything is controlled by the system. All the plants are automatically fed, as you saw yesterday. So there's not going to be, water going into the lake or
So
anything like that.
Is there a drain in there? There's not even a floor drain or anything, right?
No.
We don't drain in the building.
No. But,
Okay, so there's some.
yeah, there's a sub pump.
But what's going in there?
Circulate.
Besides the drainage from the dehumidifier? I guess I'm trying to think what's going in. What kind of water, what are we talking about? It's drainage. What's draining?
I don't know.
Look into pest management. You've got to look into that.
I think the health department for the sump discharge, normally that doesn't need to go into a septic field, but
No, normally it just is a runoff.
just goes out. But maybe in this case, it should be looked at.
Well, it definitely should be looked at, because normally a sump pump is in a basement where you removed earth and water naturally wants to come in there. That's what the sump pump is for. It's just to discard it out of the basement.
Yeah, but it's just spread out into.
Exactly, so
just
it
wherever.
definitely.
But that's,
Well, so a question for the applicant would be, what's the sump pump doing? Is it for circulating water or to?
I'm no expert at growing marijuana, but at least, I've started, garden plants and stuff in my basement, and I got house plants. You put water in them, and then they dries up. Is that like, am I simplifying it too much?
Absolutely the same.
So the sump pump,
So
I guess the one application I could see of it in, from when I was in there is that there's dehumidifiers, they're sucking moisture out of the air,
Yes.
and that is gonna collect condensation, and that's gonna go in the sump pump?
Yeah, so right now, the sub pump is just drained. If there is water, it's just being released right outside the barn. So, if you guys could,
But I think what you're saying is exactly right. The intent is that water's all gonna not be there, right? It's gonna evaporate. There's very little discharge of what actually comes from the soil. It absorbs it all. The system is not to waste water. They want to be as efficient as possible. It's part of this. That sump pump is there for just as anybody who has a sump pump in their house, right? It's that basic use. Hopefully it's never needed, but it's there in case water is present. But it is not for the plants to drain into and then discharge that out into the general area.
Fill it in. Fill the damn thing in.
What's the 2-inch pipe that water currently
Hold on, the
Well,
planning commission is working right now, hold on, yeah. And he just had public comment.
I think we should. generally, when you go to the building department, you have to get soil erosion, from the soil erosion mapping, and you have to go to before you build it. So that's gonna be in the process.
Yeah, but the soil erosion, that's if you're gonna build something, they're not disturbing anything.
No, but to get a permit, you have to even get a waiver. I mean, that has to be done. My concern is that they're gonna say, it's an existing building, we're not doing anything there, and they're just gonna give them a waiver without considering this potential.
Where's he, Dan?
Yeah, we can't, we're determining.
What is that?
on
So that's not our authority.
You, maybe Zach can speak to that.
Well, so with the special land use, again, the idea is that there's potential for greater negative impact than with regular, just permitted uses. And what I'd say is if there was large discharge of water, I'm trying to think of some other use, like a power plant where you have to have the water going through, or you have an open cell geothermal system where you're pumping water out and it's going. That's high volumes of water, or if you're discharging water regularly into the septic field, then that's when it becomes important, as it's been described by the applicant here. The intent is for there to never be water discharged, because they're losing money on their filtering, on their water, on the nutrients they put in. So it sounds like there should not be discharges. That being said, you know, the power can go down, stuff can freeze, there could be leakage. The balancing is, when you look at it, how likely is there to be volumes of discharge that are different from regular residential use? Or is it similar likelihood as if someone was living there?
That's what I see, I don't see that, I'd say mopping the floor or like.
Even if the pipes broke, there's still no great flow of water. It isn't like you're gonna get 500 gallons or something to go into the septic or into the sump.
Kurt, you mentioned the annual report. I don't know if we're gonna talk about what's in it. Might be useful if we're gonna make it as part of this.
Russ, do we want to enumerate what goes in that, or is
We
that?
need to kind of know
Yeah.
what it would be, otherwise it's.
Question on the state licensing. What kind of enforcement is that?
That could be the annual report, proof of.
You know, I would say, you know, at a minimum, let's see, hey, you got the license, right? Is that a yearly license, or, you know, is that yearly license?
2 years. Every 2 years.
2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Okay, so,
We need a copy of the license. We get a report on, well, is the sale by weight or by plant?
I think the state regulates by plant. By plant. I mean, I don't know if that's, like, we're gonna try to monitor how much product we're moving?
You can, it's by plan. And if you're going by
If
the
it's,
laws.
if it's a caregiver operation.
Yeah, just by plant.
Yeah, by plant, so we would need a report that specifies.
What's the maximum number of plants you have at a time?
That's already
Well,
in the laws.
Yeah.
Not
the maximum, the minimum, not the maximum.
Maximum's in there.
It's maximum. There's no minimum. Minimum 0.
They said they would have 2 sets of plants, but like I said, as they're rotating plants out. they
Yeah,
have
so for the
50
planning
pounds of
commission.
product sitting there, does that count as a
Yeah,
plant?
for the planning commission, state law says caregiver can have a maximum number of patients and a maximum number of plants.
Per patient.
That's the state law.
Yeah.
There's a hard cap that's completely outside of local units of governments.
The minimum number of plants they can have is 0.
Correct.
Confused by that.
Only care-
72, you know, how many times can you replant and make any money? If you have to get rid of that 72 completely before you can put the seeds in the soil or whatever it is.
That's up to them.
Well, I understand that, but I'm trying to understand how you could put all this money into this building that, I'll lose a building anyway, I'll put it up. But, you know, how can you justify it? There's gonna be something dirty down the road, because if 72 plants, or you get twice that.
We already went through public comment.
I can't hear you.
We went through public comment already.
Hey, now see, that's why you should talk all the time. We need to hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
In
how about
this-
the number of plants delivered?
Yeah.
If they're going by plants. Because that'll give you an idea of the flow of product through there.
I don't think the plants come in. Seeds, right? Or,
Yes.
But the caregiver has got to,
oh,
He's gotta deliver them.
yeah.
So I see your point, we all have to agree.
when you're talking about how many coming in,
So perhaps number of plants harvested,
harvested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and perhaps also
Yeah, so how much they're delivering
Yeah, okay,
Number-
delivered to the patient.
to the patient.
Yeah.
number of qualified patients.
Yeah,
So the way it actually rides in state law is there's the maximum of 72, but if there are only 3 qualifying patients, it's not 72 anymore. It drops down.
12 per patient.
Yep.
right, but depending on, there isn't any limit in the ballot passed law that says how much one person can use. It just says so many plants, and it doesn't say so many plants per year.
Correct.
So-
So if you got cultivate that grows super fast,
You could
Be a lot.
deliver, or you have a patient who uses more.
yep,
So that's, I guess, what I'm talking about when I say, what's the delivery, you know? How much are they delivering?
So,
Yeah, we can get a summary of that.
Yeah.
So let's know the quantity that's leaving the building.
so Kurt, does this make sense?
How long does it take to grow this stuff? Anybody know?
4 to 8 weeks, or 4 to 8 months, I usually.
4 to 8 months. Thank you.
Depending on.
That's
And
kind of
delivery.
birth. You know?
And so just for our records, not them reporting, and hopefully it's 0, but, you know, I guess I would like to know any, any complaints. You know,
That's part of the.
I would want to know.
On the annual report, yeah.
And annual report, and that's not something they're gonna probably provide, but I would like to see how many times someone called that up. or
Yeah.
The fire department had to go there, the police had to go there, you know, hopefully 0, but, you know, that's something that we would wanna look at on an annual basis.
You guys can see that clear for the
Annual
report. Make sure you guys are.
Yeah, because we're assuming they'll have a full slate of patients, but that may not be true.
But
Patient could move to,
they could die,
yeah,
and they would not have that license, and then they would have to show us, hey, we only got 4 now.
yeah. Yeah. Well, Zach, is there anything else you can see here that we need to include that we're missing?
it seems like a pretty robust list based on what you're able to do. I know
Yeah,
it doesn't.
Our hands are tied, so
Yep.
to speak.
The caregiver operation is something that local units of government have to allow.
Right.
So it is tough. There are things you don't want to do that your higher authority says you
Well,
gotta
and
do.
people need to understand that. Tell them that part again. It's something we have to allow.
Yes. The up to 72 plants per caregiver is something that every community across the state has to allow.
Right.
And you guys are actually more restricted than most in limiting where it can happen and requiring the special land use.
You should have checked with Rose Township where you said that. You know you're wrong. Check Rose Township tomorrow, you guys.
So, Zach, so the Supreme Court Byron situation they explained, it put some other things. So in the future, if we were to change our ordinance, we could say we only will allow this in this district, certain districts, right?
Yep.
But that would only apply to future applications once a new ordinance is adopted.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you change where uses are allowed, any existing uses, and this is for all zoning across the entire U.S., including Rose Township and Tyrone Township, is, in California, is if a use was legal at the time it started, it can continue to exist until certain things happen. So once there's been an intent to abandon or it's been destroyed, you've got an entire article that talks to nonconformity. So if sometime in the future the township changed and said, these are limited to industrial and commercial districts or pyro districts, any grow operations previously approved in the rural estates district would be allowed to continue until a certain thing happens. But all the new ones would have to meet the standards the day they come in the door.
So then what's the point of this whole discussion? I mean, it sounds like we just wasted 2 hours of everybody's time and life if we can't restrict it.
Well, you did say we can't restrict it.
We have to
We
use
can't.
our ordinance, Chet, and
Okay.
do what we can within our ordinance.
Which
That's
is
planning
more
We
commission.
can mitigate
Okay.
nuisances.
What we
Yeah.
do.
Okay.
So, yeah, the quick version is because you have it classified as a special land use, is you have greater ability to place conditions to mitigate
Okay.
negative impacts.
Well, let's get on with the conditions and figure this out.
So what we need is a conditional approval with those conditions. That is what you're recommending to the board.
A favorable recommendation with these conditions. And again, for the process, because that lists some changes to the site plan, including fence and inclusion of specifications for filter, it would be reviewed by staff and then the subcommittee of the planning commission to make sure that the changes specified in there are documented before it gets to the township board. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's gonna be before?
Prior, yeah,
Okay.
we would get the information, I would
Before
review
the
the information.
Before it goes to the board?
Correct, before.
Okay,
the
because that was a little bit
recommendation.
different on that Lake Urban, wasn't it? Oh, okay.
No, the conditions needed to be fulfilled prior.
All right.
which they did.
Make a motion. We have enough information.
Yeah, I think we got enough information. You want to make the motion?
No.
Okay.
Hands are tied.
So if no one's willing to make a motion, we would have to table it. It's up to the planning commission to make decisions.
Well, it really needs to be somebody other
Yeah.
than me,
Yeah.
because I sit on the board.
Yeah.
I'm fine with tabling it.
Depends on.
was tabled, so if there is not going to be a motion that needs to be tabled, and they need an explanation of what they need to do in order to complete the process so that approval is provided and move it up to the board, because it needs to go to the board.
I know we talked about it, but do we have on that list building department and other agency approvals?
No, I know we had, I could check what up with that last week's. I know we had put that up previously.
I mean, that's one of the basic requirements.
Yeah.
So it's kind of obvious, maybe it doesn't need to be on there, but wouldn't hurt.
Right. Any questions? Anything else, guys? You have questions? Clear.
Well, and if there's nobody gonna make a motion to conditionally approve this with these conditions to go up to the board, then it's gotta be tabled.
With this, if they meet these conditions, then they bring it back.
Yeah, it's up to us, and we can do that, or.
It could be a motion to
Yeah.
table pending
Pending
fulfillment
these
of these
items.
conditions.
We feel that
If
we
that's
can't
what's
decide
necessary.
based on ordinance.
But the board's, we're gonna review it after that anyway.
Right, but it goes up to the board from here with a conditional,
Following verification of the
Yeah,
conditions.
verification, so there'll be, our subcommittee will meet, and verify all these have been met, and then the board gets it, right?
yeah.
If it
Yes.
were-
So I guess I don't understand what tabling is gonna do, because that's just saying it back to the planning commission, and then
Well,
we'll.
it
Well,
would.
it would require it to come back to a formal
We
meeting.
vote to table it, and when these are done, they come back to us, we vote again, and then it goes.
Okay, so it was basically, instead of a subcommittee reviewing it, it would be the full planning commission. Yeah, and I find,
Someone want to make a motion to do that?
I'll make a motion to table it until these conditions are met.
Okay.
No, just to, make sure, it's likely, number 9, the building departments, possibly that they wouldn't be completed, right? They, all these ones are
Well,
in their control.
On there,
but
right,
just
as it
doesn't
sits
sound-
right now, my motion is to table this until all those conditions are met.
okay, well, you can't get an annual report from them yet because they're not operating, so that would be one that would be part of the
Okay.
use statement.
you can put it, provide an annual report on the 1-year anniversary, or on the
There you go.
yearly anniversary of
Yeah.
the approval, upon approval of the township board.
Each December
So-
or something like that.
We wouldn't hit that yet, so it wouldn't apply.
Exactly.
And, and that makes sense, because, the subcommittee is made up of 3 of us. And so if the entire planning commission wants to see these are met, then this is the opportunity to do that.
I guess what's gonna change between now and coming back in a month, right, other than these few changes on these drawings? I mean, you guys have all the information you need, you're charged with making a decision. I don't see the purpose of kicking the can down the road, other than to kick the can down the road. You have all you need, approve it with these conditions, the subcommittee's gonna ensure the actual compliance with these conditions, just like have a decision so that we can act.
You guys are comfortable with. Chet, you made a motion, was it seconded?
I seconded it.
Somebody second. Okay, so motion. Ross, are you clear on the motion was to table?
Motion to table pending fulfillment of conditions as listed in this document, which,
Yeah.
if you wouldn't mind sending it to me directly after the meeting,
Yeah.
and distribute to the applicants.
So we, the people that are impacted, if something comes up, if we mail that to you or whatever?
No, hold on, we have a motion on.
We need to do a vote.
So, the motion has been made and seconded to table this agenda item pending these list of conditions being met, items 1 through 9. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, so the motion is passed to table this item. We'll move to old business, item number 2.
Yeah, that's enough.
Yeah, so, Zach, I know in our last workshop meeting, we had gone through many different ideas for survey topics, questions, whatever. I don't know if you have some updates where you're at on that, and
Our aim is to have both the work plan and probable cost estimate and a big goulash of survey questions for the workshop next Wednesday.
okay.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
The probable cost estimate and work plan will probably be out tomorrow. It's in draft form, but I wanted to review it with the principal who's preparing it to kind of right size it based on the discussions. The questions will probably be available Friday afternoon. So we have a bit of time to go through them.
Ross did give us or reminded us that in 2019, we passed some potential edits. So I'm assuming you got it.
Yep. No more Kmart anywhere.
And the notices were sent out as far as the intent to plan,
Yeah.
That was, okay. Did everyone see the item Ross sent, or do you guys want to see it now?
Yeah.
Pretty good. We got it, yeah. I have it here if you want. So regarding that, I don't know if you guys have any other comments on the master plan at this time. We really to your point, Zach, we'll work on that in our next workshop meeting as far as the broad range of questions you have and see how we come up with a survey from that point.
Yep.
As a planning commission.
And if you're able to get pretty close, we can set up a survey and website kind of to help direct folks there with the QR code and the BIDI URL and all that stuff to get it live pretty quickly.
Ross, have we sent out the intention to plan yet? So that's gone out to all of our neighboring.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a question on that website item, Zach. Is that gonna, in there, is it strictly, hey, here's the questions we want to have an answer to, or is there like a comments page, or just curious?
Yep, so generally when we do at least the larger master plan processes, we like to have a web page just kind of to support it. So on there we include links to surveys, We include previous master plans, we include the studies, comments received at public meetings, basically anything you want so that folks who are interested have a one-stop shop to inform themselves and be engaged in the process without putting demands on the township to create its own website and manage it.
So is there anything at this time, Zach, that you need from the planning commission?
Not today, no.
Not today.
Giving you a break on this topic today.
Anything from the planning commission that, any comments or ideas or anything? I know we've been through on the master plan regarding this agenda item. I know there's a lot of data that can be gathered. Well, you mentioned
Yep.
that for us to look at. So Ross or anybody else, you have anything on the master plan, or at this time, do we not want to delve into anything deeply? That's up to you guys, let me know.
I,
There's a lot of items to
I
discuss,
think people are
whether or not we can.
2 hours out.
Yeah.
So. That's item number 2.
You know, could we go back? I know the applicant left, but could we go back and discuss that, selling anything a little bit more on that?
Yeah, if we get there, we're after old business. we
Okay,
can
we
move
have
to
I thought we
miscellaneous.
were done with this.
Yeah, we can, in miscellaneous business, we
Okay.
can, as a planning commission. So, any, for old business, item number 2, anything from the planning commission? No. Okay, no new business, so we're gonna go to call the public again. And so if you could, please, try to limit it as before, 3 minutes, and then please come to the podium if you're able. That would be great.
My name's CJ Callahan. This master plan should have been set up a long time ago where you put the marijuana stuff on Old 20th Street, which is supposed to be your strip for all commercial businesses. And right down by me, you got a plant that went in there and hauling concrete and everything in and out. I don't have a problem with it personally because that's where it's supposed to be. And my understanding is Mrs. Kennedy wants to put in a storage type thing on her property. You know, whether or not it gets approved, I don't have any idea. I don't know what stage it's in. But if it's on Old 23 and that's what it's designed for under your master plan, that's what you should put on that piece of paper to give back to this lawyer and send him somewhere else. You know, this property has been an eyesore. I've complained about it. Nothing's happened. The bottom part of it, somebody put some aluminum siding on it. The top part of it, I believe, is asbestos. So if they do anything, it'd be a good idea to do it correctly, because it'll be a hell of a lawsuit from us if that stuff's in the air along with this marijuana.
Thank you. Yeah, you had your hand up.
Kim Fracolosi, Deer Park Court. I just wanted to say that the master planning is so critical. I think over the course of the last 2 years or so, we have realized that the ordinances, these guys are bound by the ordinances, right? So do they want that stuff where it's at in some of these fights that we're having? No. That's why it's so important for all of us to get involved so that we make sure this kind of stuff does get in place in the areas and the law is in our favor to be able to guide some of this stuff so it's not in our neighborhoods. So I think I'm just requesting that everybody gets involved in this master plan and that we make sure the ordinances are tight enough so you guys don't have to, every single time this stuff comes up, have a fight. Because this is pretty painful. It's hard for you guys to say no when you know sitting right next to it, they're smelling this and it's bad. And the experiences that a lot of people have, particularly with the lighting, so I'm glad you put that in there. So we just have to work to make sure that we get this master plan tightened up. And all of us have to do our part, and that's all I'm requesting.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Steve Bissell on View Trail again. A suggestion, and Zach, maybe you're familiar with it relative to the caretaker situation. It seems like there's a lot of confusion about like exactly, this sounds stupid, exactly how the applicant is growing their product. And I'm just wondering if, because I'm a manufacturing guy, if like somebody requested something similar to a process flow chart that's visual, that, and yes, it would help them, but I think it would help anyone in the room understand better how they're going to process their plants and you know what raw products are coming into the building, if it's just seed, and they're growing seedlings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the way through when they've got processed product leaving their building. How is it leaving the building? And it can simply be done with squares and arrows and you know descriptions. I know I'm not the only person in the room that understands the process. Huh?
ISO 9000.
There you go. So I mean, to me, it's, you know, I you know, automotive guy, and I looked at process flow charts for almost 40 years. It seems like if the people, everyone had the visual, and then let them get up here and explain what they're doing, it might help everybody make a decision for the good or, you know, for the negative, depending on who's affected by it. Because it seems like the discussion is just going in a circle, and these guys are trying to defend themselves, and they don't know, they really don't understand what they need to explain. So it's just a thought, I guess. And the only other thing I had is regarding that same topic. The building commission, or the Livingston County Building Commission, has to have visited their site to approve or not approve changes they've made or are making. I mean, is that, do they aren't going to get involved in that? I mean, they come and approve.
But they need to approve it.
That's going to
They
be a
need
big
to
problem.
approve it,
They need to
right?
approve it. Have they been there or
Let's
not?
hold on after all.
Okay, anyway, I'm just asking because Livingston County Building Commission is tough to deal with. I can't believe they've been there, and if, with all the comments everybody's made and the observations, I can't believe the Building Commission, based on what I've heard, has approved anything to operate. I just was curious.
Thank you for your time. Anyone else?
I'm sorry I have to get up again and say this, but I thought that this was a very important question. I didn't hear it covered. But I would like you to find out from them how they're conducting their pest management, and they will have pests on their plants that they have to manage. They use the word organic. Organic is a loosely used term. And when he talked about, they specifically said in their whatever it is, their proposal, that the trays are going to drain out. Now they're saying, I grew up on a farm. I garden. I start my plants indoors. And no, they do not use up all the water, always. That's just that, there's gonna be runoff. So also the other part is how will they be cleaning those sprayers? I would get a list and demand a list of what they're going to be using, because this stuff is going to go out into the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room here? Let's see, there's a hand. Sarah, if you could unmute, go ahead, please.
Hey, so I just wondered whether, I don't know if you can answer this or not, I can follow up again, but I just wondered if either Zach from Carlisle Wortman or the Planning Commission or both strategically are documenting the ordinances that come up through all of these applications that need to be tightened up and addressed. Because I'm not on the Planning Commission and it's overwhelming as we work through all these applications. The number of things that pop up that really need to be addressed. So is anybody tracking that somehow is my question.
Yep. Any other comments, and then maybe we can go kind of overview of the comments after like we did previously. Sarah, do you have any other comments?
No, I'm all set, thank you.
Thanks. Anything else? Call to the public? All right, close the call to the public, and Zach, maybe you can address it, or Ross, but I can speak for what the Planning Commission has. We have like a kind of a action item list, we would call it, and we do track and what's been on there quite a few times in the last year, I know, is the accessory structures, where we've had a lot of times where it comes for minor things, and they come before the Planning Commission and they're ultimately approved, but based upon our ordinance, they have to come here, so that's something that we're looking at. But Ross, I don't know if you want to have any more comments on that. I know
The
you
action list,
track it.
yeah, the action list is the working document that the Planning Commission keeps track of future amendments and things like that. We also have a lot of informal lists, just trying to track all of these issues that come up with every application. So we actually have a long running list of items that require attention as soon as possible.
And some other ways that communities will track and identify is if you get a lot of variances for the same thing. And that's why there's cross-representation, where you have a member of the Planning Commission on the Zoning Board of Appeals and a member of the Township Board on the Zoning Board of Appeals. So they'll take it back to those bodies and say, guys, I'm sick of hearing variances for sign setbacks. We got to fix this.
That's what prompted the accessory structures, for example, when we're revisiting that.
Some other ways communities will generate the list. You guys already have a list, but there can be joint meetings where you'll get together and say, here's something that's not working. Staff identifies it on their own because they know the bits that are just weird or contradictory or come up all the time. Another place where items are generated are from your master plan. So the master plan is a policy document. It doesn't have the force of law, but you need to have it if you want to have a zoning ordinance. And once you've adopted a new master plan, that's usually a good chance to look to your zoning ordinance to see how it matches. Now, I will say, if you had an unlimited budget, there are a lot of things you can do to make your zoning ordinance a lot better and easier to use. So kind of my rule of thumb, my mom was an English teacher and professor, and she would always say, know who your audience is. And most of the users for communities like Tyrone Township with the zoning ordinance, in addition to staff, are property owners. So I'm going to contrast that with like City of Ann Arbor, where there's a lot more developers who are using that compared to regular folks or builders using it, because folks there don't tend to build 20-story buildings on their own. And right now, there's a lot of stuff in your zoning ordinance that is really more complex than it has to be. But that's kind of a much bigger issue to address down the line.
Thanks, Zach. Miscellaneous business. Steve, you wanted to bring something up?
Yeah, my comment, with the attorney was kind of saying we're kicking the can down the road in that. This whole process is, in my opinion, completely backwards. They should have gotten site plan first, then they come in and get their land use permit, and then they go down and pull a permit, and then they go do the building. And the building's already done. I mean, the new electrical panels in, I was stunned when I went in there and saw that it was actually already completed, and they haven't pulled the permit. I mean, they've got covered electrical. They haven't, I doubt if they've done a load letter. you know, for the electrical part.
So
And, I mean, I'm just like stunned. And I
they're
feel
under
like-
enforcement with Livingston County. They need to make sure that everything is brought up to code before they'll issue any approvals. So right now, they do not have approvals, and approvals are required before we can proceed.
Yeah, they're gonna run into some.
They need to
real
do
problems with
exploratory
the-
work because it's done backwards. They need
Yeah.
to basically cut in through the walls, through the insulation, wherever they need to view something that may be covered up by now.
And
So,
yeah.
yeah.
My experience is building enforcement folks, if you've done something and you're cranky or whatever, you look at them sideways, they're gonna say, we want to see every connection, pull it out.
Tear it up, yeah.
I've seen folks, building inspectors actually do that for decks, like, I need to see that's 42 inches, I don't care if there's planking on top, pop the planking, dig the hole next to it.
Mhm.
I suspect that's gonna be the case where the inspectors are gonna wanna see everything that they have to see. That's how it is. There's a cost to the folks who do it backwards, is they're gonna have to tear stuff off and redo it.
Yeah, and another thing is, you commented that they spent $100,000 on the building so far, but they haven't done anything to clean up the property. And that to me goes back to the comment of they just try to get away with it, and you know, I'm pretty upset that we're kind of forced to approve this just because our ordinance says we are.
I agree.
Yeah, I wish we could vote no, but I think if we did, we'd get sued. And I just think that they need to clean up give them some time in the next month. Start picking up some of that stuff in that yard and show us that you're gonna do something that you say you're gonna do, and not just going and doing all that construction they did without pulling a permit. It's just, to me, it's insane. Someone's been in the building business for 40 years.
Steve, I respect what you say, but if I would ask why we couldn't reject this based on the fact that they went and did it illegally. Should not that give us an opportunity?
Hold on. Yeah, so Steve, to your comments, and maybe this will probably answer maybe if someone has questions right now, but we must take their application and consider it and recommend an approval or disapproval based upon our ordinance. And when this business item was on the agenda and we were considering it, Zach mentioned, and I asked Zach that question, how does this come into play? And I don't know, maybe for the planning commission, Zach, if you could reiterate again, so we are all clear that we don't go outside of what we're asked to do here.
Yeah, well, and I'll say it a little bit different way, is that, as was touched on, you have criteria. Your job is not whether or not you like a use or dislike a use, or the applicants, or what they've done before, what they want to do. You have to look to their criteria. Does it meet all, in the back of the report, the criteria for special land uses in general? Does it meet the criteria for this specific use? Does it meet the criteria for the site plan? Do you have conditions that mitigate potential impacts? So, to the specific though, one of your criteria isn't have they done bad things in the past.
Right.
I will tell you though, having worked in code enforcement, that means my spidey senses are immediately activated. So you get that one call from the person, you know that something's probably up, and you're going out there as soon as you can instead of waiting until you've got an open spot. You know that the neighbors are going to be hyper aware, and it's also an opportunity. What I've done in the past is to deputize the neighbors, so that oftentimes it's difficult for staff to see things because we're only in the office a limited amount of time, and whereas folks who live right there see it all the time. You know, if someone's coming into a site and having a loud party at 12:30 at night, that's not going to happen for us to document, but there's ways we can help them do it. So that immediately, if there's known mischief in the past, you can't deny it because they're trying to get legal, but it means you're going to be paying much more attention, and you're going to be much stricter with the conditions. You're going to be much more clear and precise.
Thanks, Zach. Anything else for that one, Steve? Adjournment?
Move we adjourn.
Thanks, Kurt.
Like you said,
about anything else that goes on.
One doctor in all of them, that won't give you one of them, okay? Any other, you walk in, walk out. And that's the fact, not that I try to get rid of it.
Used cars there last year, you owned some used cars. This is the kind of stuff that,
Again, that's why.
shall we write it all down and send it to you guys? I mean, that's crazy.
Absolutely.
As I said, we need to write this all down and send a letter to you guys.